Hello and welcome to my channel. If you've been here before, welcome back. My name is Alfonso Peluso and I'm a Studio Associate Professor in the College of Architecture at IIT, the home of the legendary Mies van der Rohe, and I'm adjunct faculty at Columbia College Chicago in the Interior Architecture program. Shout out to all my students. I hope you're having a great day. It's a nice sunny day here in Chicago in the 80-degree weather. I hope the weather's great where you're at. Today we're going to look at Lumion Materials, and we're going to create an image like we see on the screen here. And this is going to wrap up my series on real-time rendering engines, so I'm pretty excited about that. Here's a little outline of what we're going to go over on the right-hand screen. So we're going to cover this in terms of materials before we jump into the tutorial. If you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, what are you waiting for? Click on subscribe, click on the bell to receive all the notifications. You can see my latest videos on real-time rendering engines. We looked at Enscape, Twinmotion, Lumion, and this is our last video, Lumion Materials. So check that out. There's also something for you. If you're into digital design, you'll find some video that's helpful for you. Alright, also connect with me on Instagram at my first name Alfonso _ my last name Peluso. See what I'm up to with my students, see what my latest video is. I am wrapping up a summer design visualization course, which is a course that's all about rendering. That's going to wrap up this week. Alright, let's jump into the tutorial. So to begin with, we're looking at using Lumion 2023. A lot of new features in Lumion 2023, so I'm pretty excited about that. We're going to start out by looking at something very simple, just some wood flooring material. Alright, so I am going to live sync this. Let's see what I have over here in Lumion. Alright, so it's just it's a file. If you haven't looked at my Lumion Basics video and my Lumion Lighting video, go ahead and check those out and then come back to this one. We modeled a simple pavilion and we added a little bit of furniture and some lighting, and today we're going to add materials. So I'm going to live sync my Rhino file, but I am going to first just look at isolating the wood floor. I'm going to make my right viewport. I'm going to set that to a perspective and change that C-plane to world top, and we'll make this a shaded view. And I'm going to isolate the floor, which is the red object in this case. So I'm going to click that floor, I'm going to type in isolate, and I'm going to live sync this with Lumion. So I'm going to start my live sync and head on over to Lumion, and there we have my wood floor. It's not wood floor yet, but we're going to make it a wood floor. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to be getting some materials from a couple of places today. One of them is going to be Ambient CG. AmbientCG.com has a ton of materials for you to choose from. So it's a good place, a good resource to get your materials. So let's go to materials and let's go to wood. And I'm going to scroll down a little bit. I have this wood flooring here, wood floor 051. Okay, there's lots of different resolutions you can download at. I'm rendering at a fairly low resolution now. I'm rendering at high def, so 1920 by 1080. So 1K materials are good enough for that. So I'm going to download this. And it's always a good idea to make a materials folder and store all your materials in that folder. Alright, and that's going to be a zipped up file, so we're going to unzip it in a second here. Alright, so we're going to right click on it and extract all. And let's take a look at what's inside. Alright, so we have a bunch of different maps that we can use. One of them is the wood floor color, so that's the one I'm going to focus on now. So we're going to have to tell Lumion what scale or what size to map this material out at. And right now we have 24 planks. If I was to count these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on, I would get to 24 planks. So 24 planks, I'm going to say at 4 inches a plank is 96 inches. So that's something to keep in mind when we're going to size this material. So it's going to be 96 by 96. And it's square. That's the other nice thing about this material sample, is that it's square. I like to find material samples that cover a large area. So this is 96 by 96 inches. I like them to be seamless. I like them to be square. And I like them to be a medium resolution. So this is 1K, so that's a medium resolution. So those 4 things again. I like them to cover a large area. I like them to be square. I like them to be seamless. And I like them to be a medium resolution, in this case 1K. Alright, so keep those principles in mind. Alright, so let's map this out. So what was important is in Rhino, this has a material assigned to the wood floor already, and that is just a gray material, and it's called wood floor. So when I go over to my materials and I hover over this, it says material floor. So that's just a material called floor, and Lumion puts the prefix material, so it's material floor. So I can click on that, and I'm going to go to texture, load map, and I'm going to go to my materials folder that we just made, and I'm going to find that wood floor color, and I'm going to open that up, and you see it places it on the floor object. It doesn't know how large or small to make it, so it just kind of fits it onto the wood floor object, and it's also showing up as black and white. So let's deal with the black and white first. So that's because my texture by default is set to 50% in Lumion. So I'm going to make that 100%. Now you can see the full material texture. Now the size I mentioned was going to be 96 inches by 96 inches. So I'm going to make a mapping widget over in Rhino that size. So I'm in Rhino, I have the object selected. I'm going to go over to properties, and I'm going to click on texture mapping. I'm going to click on plus to add a box map. I'm going to make a box. I'm going to click caps yes over here in Rhino, and then over here in the lower right I'm going to set the XYZ. I'm going to set those all to 96 because this is a square sample, and we'll take a look at what happens when it's not square in a little bit. You can do things that are not square. It's not the most ideal, but you can do it. In this case it's square. I make these all 96. I'm going to lock that. My live sync I believe is still on, so that should automatically update over in Lumion. Yeah, so you see we got that updated here with the right scale. Now if I needed to rotate that, I would go down under UV coordinates in Lumion here. I'd click on the move. I would click on, where is my heading? Wondering why that's grayed out. Let's take a look at that. Alright, that's not available. I wonder if it's because that stuff is coming over from Rhino that it's making that not available. If someone knows about that, please leave something down in the comments on why that is grayed out and why we're no longer able to rotate it. I'm sure it has to do with the mapping widget. So if I did need to rotate it now in Rhino, I can go here and under Z, I can type in 90, and if I go back over to Lumion, that flooring material is going horizontal across the screen. Alright. So we have our wood flooring material. That looks pretty good. Next thing we're going to look at is a brick material for our brick walls. So I'm going to head on over to the web, and we're going to look at a different site that we can get some textures from that's free. So this is architectures.org. This is a nice site. Has a nice selection. If you can't find something on Ambient CG, this has a really nice selection of materials. We're going to look under the category of brick, and I'm going to scroll down under more, and there's a rusticated red brick stretcher. I'm going to go ahead and click on that, and that is going to show me the size of that here, 66.1 inches by 35.4 inches, so not square. So it covers all of my requirements except it's not square. I'm going to go ahead and download that, and I'm going to download the free small texture, and that's just not a zipped file, it's just one file by itself. Okay, we'll head on over to Rhino, and we're going to type in show, and I'm going to select the two walls, and I'm going to type in isolate. So there we have just our two walls, so we're going to deal with those over in Lumion. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and select material walls, and we're going to add our texture. In this case, it's going to be this rusticated red brick stretcher. Okay, that gets added on. We're going to make the texture 100%. Okay. Alright, so that looks pretty good there at 100%. Now we need to set the size of this material. Okay, so we're going to do that back over in Rhino. And remember, the size of these bricks is 66.1 inches by 35.4 inches. So it's not square. So when I select both of these, okay, and this is a situation where there's more than one object. So when there's more than one object that is going to have a brick material, you select all the objects at once. It could be 1, it could be 50, it could be 100. All of the objects that are going to have the brick material should get selected. And I'm going to click on the plus for apply box mapping. I'm going to make my box. Click on yes from the command line for capped. And I'm going to change the size of this. So 66.1 by 35.4. And I don't know what to put in the Z because it's not all square, so I don't know what to put in it. So I'm going to start with 66.1. Okay, I'm going to head back over to Lumion. Okay, and that's changed the size. But they're very tall. The bricks are very tall at the moment. So it means I have that Z value, the wrong value in there. So I'm going to head back over to Rhino. And I'm going to put the 35.4, the smaller value in there, and head back over to Lumion. And I can see that that looks more like a brick material. Alright, that's looking pretty good there. That brick looks really good. Alright, next on our agenda, let's head on over to Rhino and see what we're looking at next. So we looked at wood flooring, we looked at brick wall. Next thing we're going to look at is metal. So we're going to make this from scratch. I'm going to make a metal object, and then I'm going to make a metal material in Rhino so that Lumion recognizes that metal material, and then we'll go ahead and make a new material in Lumion that is metal. Okay, so I'm going to make a new layer. I'm going to call this new layer metal. And then I'm going to click on the little white colored circle to make a new material. Now I want to call it metal, but the reason I'm not going to call it metal is Lumion will automatically make a metal material for me, and I want to make my own material. So if it's called metal, Lumion's going to be smart and make a metal material. So I'm going to call it aluminum, and I don't think it will make a metal material for me. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and make sure that metal layer is current, and I'm going to draw a cylinder on that layer. I'll draw it a little bit smaller. Let me make another one. There we go. So I'm also going to move it up to the bottom of the wall because that's where our floor is. Okay, so there's our little cylinder. I'll move it over a little bit. Move it into the space. Okay, let's save that file. Head over to Lumion. Alright, so there is our object there, our material aluminum. So let's click on it. It didn't make a metal material, it's just a color material. And to make this metal, we're going to take the metalness all the way up. And we're going to take metal material all the way up. The roughness we're going to take down a little bit. Now if I take it down too much, it gets reflective like a mirror. So not sure what I'm going to keep that at yet. Maybe somewhere right about there. We'll see this a little bit better when we look at our actual rendering and we look at the effects that are applied to it. The metal material in the preview, at least on my computer, doesn't show up very well. So we have to wait to tweak it a little bit down the road. So that's our metal material. Now we're going to make another type of metal material that's going to be an opacity map. So we're going to make a perforated metal that needs an opacity map, and we'll talk more about that. Let's save the Lumion file here. Let's see, I'm going to save as, so I'm saving it as the right file. Okay. Alright, so let's head over to Rhino and we're going to make a new layer called perforated metal. Perforated metal, and we're going to go ahead and make a material for it. We're just going to call this one opacity, because it's going to be an opacity map. If you're not sure or you've never made an opacity map, great, this will be your first time and you'll learn how to do it, and it's the same in any software that you're using. So I'm going to type in plane and I'm going to make it vertical, and I'm going to make that over here, and I'm going to move it just inside the building here. Move it up to the right height, get it floating in there. It's a little bit too big right now, so I'm going to scale that down. Okay, that looks about right. Okay, so there is our perforated metal. And just go over to Lumion, we should see that floating plane. And it put the material aluminum on it. That should update in a little bit here. Oh, it did that because I drew it on the metal layer. I made a perforated metal material, but I drew it on the metal layer. So let's get that on the perforated metal. So select it, right click, change object layer. That should automatically update over in Lumion. Yeah, so now it's just got a blank material on it. Okay, so an opacity map, what is that? So if we head on over to ambientcg.com and we go to materials and we search for perforated metal. And here are our perforated metals. So I like the second one. So what it has is it has a material. Let's go ahead and download on it and look at it a little closer. Not a material, but it has a texture map. And what that texture map looks like, let's get that unzipped and take a look at it. Okay, so it has an opacity map right here. So if I double click on the opacity map, that's going to open up and you're going to see the black areas will become transparent. You saw that in the preview in Ambient CG. So white equals opaque, black equals transparent. So these are simple maps that you can make on your own. You just need to be black and white. Black is transparent, white is opaque. Alright, so let's take a look at that in Lumion. Alright, so we're going to select that material. We're going to click on texture. We're going to go to our sheet metal. And okay, so this is our diffuse map. So we're going to use this color map. It's kind of a, looks like a galvanized metal material. It's got the gray and light gray and dark gray flakes on it. But for opacity map, we're going to go down here under properties and you'll see there's a slot for opacity, and we're going to click on load map and we're going to choose the opacity map. Okay, now you're seeing where it's transparent and where it's opaque, and we're going to give this some metalness and make it kind of shiny. There we go, that's shining up really good there. We'll take the roughness down a little bit so it gets some reflection on it. Alright, the other thing I want to deal with is the scale of this. So I'm going to do that over in Rhino. I'm going to make a mapping widget that is a box. I'll make it 4 feet by 4 feet. So I'll head on over to Rhino. I'll isolate that. Make the mapping widget. Okay, I'll select the object, go to Properties. My texture mapping is selected. I go to plus to apply box mapping. And I click on the CapGS from the command line. And I'm going to make these all 48. And I'm going to lock that. Head on over to Lumion and see what that looks like. Okay, it's a little bit too small. A little bit too small. So we're going to make that larger. So this will give you, so you can see how that we can make this larger. Just want to get this on the screen there. There we go. Alright, so let's go back over to Rhino. Let's go on this eye level view. Let's make this, so that's 48. Let's try 96. All those will update to 96. And back over in Lumion, we see that as 96. So a larger size. So that looks pretty good. Alright, we are cruising through this. Let's see what is next. Okay, so we've looked at metal, we've looked at opacity map, perforated metal. Self-illumination. So I did look at this in the lighting video, but we're going to look at it again in the materials video. So I have an object on a layer called self-illumination. And if I type in show, there is my self-illuminated object. So I'm going to select that. I'm going to select the walls, the ceiling, and the floor. The two objects we just made, the metal and the perforated metal. I'm going to type in isolate and go on over to Lumion. Okay, so here's our material self-illumination. So if I click on that, I'm going to go down to emissive strength, and I'm going to raise that up all the way, and you see it starts to, it really just gets a bright white. It doesn't really start to glow. To actually see that glowing, I need this to be a night scene. So I can take my, I can go to my weather, and I can take my sun brightness all the way down, and I can click off of that and let that update. And you'll see that object starts to self-illuminate. And we can change the color of that. So I can go to Materials and click on that one and change the color. I'm going to change it to like a magenta color. So you see that glowing in the magenta color range there. Alright, that's pretty cool. And we'll take a look at a different effect, if I can remember, toward the end of the video. Look at a night scene and see how that renders out. Alright, so that's our self-illumination. So I'm going to click the check mark for that and bring our sun back up. Okay. Alright. Going good here. What is next on the agenda? Next thing on the agenda is grass materials. So let's look at grass. So this model that we're working with here, we don't see the grass object yet because it's hidden inside of Rhino. So let's isolate that inside of Rhino. Let's go ahead and type in show, and let's find our grass object, which is this blue object here, and let's isolate that. Let's head on over to Lumion. So there we see our grass object, this large plane. Alright, so we're going to click on that, and we're going to go to Materials, click on Material Landscape. We're going to go to Materials. So one of the items on our list is importing materials from the Lumion material library. So Lumion has a material library. You can get all the materials that you need. It doesn't have everything, but it has a lot. And we looked at getting it from the internet. Now we're going to look at getting it from the materials that are built in. So I'm clicking on Materials, and I need my grass material. So that one is going to be see where my grass material is going to be. Let's go to landscape. There we go. So we go to landscape. So landscape has a different category there. And there is a 3D grass. There are 2D landscape materials, and then there's a 3D grass. And I want to look at that one. I'm going to click on that one, and that sets it to the material of grass. And if I go to settings, I have some settings here that I can change. Let's zoom into it and really kind of see it. So you got to zoom in pretty close to see that it is 3D here. And let's look at that with the patio layer turned on in Rhino, so we can just get a sense of the scale. So I'm going to type in show, and I have this purple object, which is the patio, and the blue object, which is the grass. I'm going to isolate those two and look at that in Lumion here, so I can get a sense of the length of the grass. So I'm just zooming in. I'm going to go to grass length, and I'm going to turn that grass length up until it peeks through the patio material. So now it's starting to peek through the patio material. So I'm going to lower that down, the patio object, I should say. Okay, now we don't see any grass coming through our patio object. Alright, so we have some 3D grass here. We can see it casting a shadow on the patio object. Alright, while we're here, let's put a material on the patio object. So let's select that one. Go to settings. I'm going to make that a bluish gray object, and I'm going to take the roughness down so it has some reflectivity to it. Alright, that looks pretty good there. What is next? Okay, so next. So that was grass. So because we're making a grass, we're going to look at a carpet material. Now, as far as I know, Lumion doesn't have a carpet material built into it like Enscape does, and V-Ray has a fur material. Twinmotion didn't have one, and we used grass. So we'll use grass again to make this carpet material. Alright, so let's first get a map, a carpet map. So let's head on over to Ambient CG, and let's go to the materials, and let's go ahead and look at carpet. Okay, and there is going to be one. We're going to look at this black and white one here, gray, light gray, dark gray, and we're going to download that, and then we're going to extract that. Okay, so that's there. And if we just take a look at it here, we'll see the color of it. So that's going to be the material that we're putting on there. It looks like it's about, I don't know, maybe 4 foot by 4 foot in terms of size, so we'll keep that in mind. Alright, so let's apply that in Lumion. So we need to make a carpet object, and I'm going to make that object just below my material, or just below my furniture here. Okay, so we'll zoom into about there. And let's make a new layer. A new layer, call this area rug. And let's make the material carpet. Okay, so that's carpet. And let's actually draw the carpet. So I need my floor. So I'm going to isolate that. I'm going to select my walls and my floor and isolate those. And I'm going to draw a box on the area rug layer, so that's important. I'm going to draw a box on the area rug layer, and I'm going to go ahead and make that box about that big, and I'm going to make it 0.25 inches tall, so 1/4 inch high. And I need to move that so that it is on top of the floor. Okay, so you see it in the view there. Now we just have to position it you know, based on where that furniture is in Lumion. So I got to just move it up and over a little bit. It's a pretty big piece of carpet, but that should work. Move it up a little bit and over. See how that looks. Alright, not quite centered, so up a little bit. I should do these with the side-by-side window, Rhino and Lumion, so I'm not guessing at it. So just a little bit back. Alright, that looks pretty good. There's our carpet object. Alright, so let's just attack this as if we're just making a regular material, not a grass material, and let's just see what it looks like so we can see the differences between the two. So let's select that, and let's put our texture map on there for color. So we're going to find our carpet, and we're going to go ahead and put that color on there. So size of this, I want to get this mapped correctly. Now I can do the size here since it's just carpet. I can do this visually. So here's my carpet size texture, and let's see if we can get it. There we go. We get it small enough. So we can just do that here. So that looks pretty good in terms of a little grid pattern on there. So I'm liking that. So for the relief, which is the bump map, and we're going to look a little bit closer at this in a little while. We'll take a sneak peek at it. So I'm going to click on relief, and I have different ones I can use. I can use displacement. I can use one of the two normals. The ambient occlusion is also black and white, the roughness. So it's just a black and white image that makes a little bit of fur to it. So let's go with let's just try this displacement map to begin with. Okay, and that's set for the roughness. And I'm going to lower that down. Oh, I'm sorry, for the relief. This needs to be for the relief. I don't want any reflectivity on that. Let's zoom in a little bit closer just to see what's happening here. Get in there a little bit closer. Okay, so you see we're getting a kind of a bump pattern from that relief, from that displacement. Let's look at a few other options we have for the relief. So we have a normal. So that makes it a little bit nicer. We don't get so much color variation in it. But we can also go a next step. If we want this to look more like a shag rug, we can go ahead and go to materials, go back to our 3D grass, apply that 3D grass. Now we're getting all of the properties of a shag carpet, like a long haired carpet. And if we go to settings, we can change the texture and we can make it our carpet color. Okay, so the grass, the texture doesn't show through 100%, even if I make it 100%. I get the color of it, but I'm not getting the grid pattern. So it's kind of a trade-off. It depends what kind of carpet you're looking for. I can take the grass length of this down and the grass size of this and make the grass size smaller. Okay, so that's looking more like carpet than grass now at that size. The normal map, so they have that normal map there. I can put in the normal map for the carpet. Doesn't really change too much. Alright, so that's one way we can make a carpet that looks like a nice carpet I'd like to lay in. It looks nice and plush and soft. Alright, so let's save this while we're here. And let's head on over to Rhino and see what's next. Okay, so we looked at grass, we looked at carpet. So importing from the material library. So we've done a little bit of this. Let's just do another one, import from the material library. So I want to change the brick that we're working with. So I can look at getting that from the material library. I won't know exactly the mapping size though when I look at it from the material library, but I can count its bricks and take a guess at it. So I'm going to click on material walls, and I'm going to go to materials, and I'm going to go to, I want to make a new material. So let's see, this happens to me every so often where I'm clicking on things and they just don't appear, and it's kind of Lumion freaking out a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the live sync because I don't need the live sync right now at the moment. Okay, that's usually helpful for me. The other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom way out and see if I can get this check mark to work. Okay, there, the check mark works, so I'm back in business. So I want to go back over and look at this brick wall. So I'm going to select it, go to materials, and I'm going to go to materials tab, and the brick material, I'm going to find that under stone. So under stone, I'm going to find bricks, and I can click on these and they'll automatically be assigned to that brick wall. And one thing we can look at is the scale of them. So these look pretty good, you know, at the scale that we have from our brick material from Rhino. They're not too bad. So it's really easy to import materials from the Lumion material library and see what they have there. We're going to go ahead and get a specific one from Ambient CG, and we'll work with the bump mapping for that. So I'm going to head on over to Ambient CG, and I'm going to go to materials, and I'm going to type in brick, and I'm going to scroll down a little ways here, and I'm going to go to this one. This one has a nice kind of bump feel. It also has kind of a glossy sheen to it. So I'm going to go ahead and download the 1K version of that. And let's look at that. And we're going to extract that. Alright, so that has our bricks. Take a look at it. Okay, there's the bricks. It has some other maps that go along with it. This is the one, this or this one, depending on how I want that bump to look. I'm going to use this for our height map or our bump map. Relief is what Lumion is calling it. Alright, so let's head on over to Lumion. We'll go to Material Walls, and we're going to go to New, and I'm going to click Standard, and I'll go to, I double clicked on it. I'm going to go to Texture and find my brick map. So I went kind of fast over where the new materials were, so we'll hopefully get a chance to make another material. So here's that brick material, and the mapping we can tell is not correct for that. So if I click on that, just hover over it. So this has, if I was to count all the bricks, the rows of bricks there, it has 19 rows of bricks. If I assign it 2.66 inches, which is just roughly a brick and a row of mortar, is about 51 inches. So I need to head back over to Rhino and select those two walls and go to my object properties and change these all to 51. It's square. So these can all be 51 since that texture is square. Okay, and that, I'm going to Lumion live sync that, and then I'll stop the live sync. Okay, so there's my brick material with a much more natural type of size to it. Alright, so I want to give this some bump, some relief to it. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit. I'm going to go to my camera view. Okay, we're going to use this view for the bump. Alright, it's looking good. So we'll go to Materials. We'll click on our Material Walls. We're going to go down to Relief. Alright, this is giving me that same problem again. Okay, so we're going to look at putting the relief map on this. So we'll click on load map, and I'll try the normal DX. There's a normal DX and there was a normal GL. Okay, so we see we get a nice little relief pattern on that. We can try the other one, and it's really just a matter of which one we like. So this kind of goes in the opposite direction, the bump. I like the first one. This one looks like the bricks are set back, they're set in. I like it when they look like they're set out. Okay, there we go, that looks pretty good. And I have, control over the relief pattern. I can make this really large, and it's only going to bump out so much. It's not a physical bump, it's a virtual bump. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Alright, it's looking good. So that's a little bit about bump mapping. Alright, let's save this. And we'll head on over to Rhino and see what's next on our agenda. Okay, so we looked at grass, carpet, import from material library, bump map. Okay, glass. Everybody's been waiting for glass, and Lumion does have a lot of good options for glass. You just have to kind of dig down deep in there and see what works best for you. So we're going to make a new layer. We're going to call that layer glass. Now if I assign it a material called glass, it's going to automatically put a glass material on it. So let's just see what that happens. I mentioned that it did it with metal, but we tricked it. We'll keep it as glass and see what type of material we have to start with. I'm going to make a box, and I'm going to make that box vertical. I'm going to make it in the back here from end to end to end, and I'm going to make it 1 inch. Alright, so there's my glass. And let's go ahead and save the Rhino file. And let's live sync this. And once it's live synced over, we will just stop the live sync. So there you see it. We have a piece of glass. It looks like I stopped the live sync. Did I stop it? No, I didn't stop it. Stop it now. Alright, so we're looking at some glass. Let's get a look at this through the camera. Alright, so there's our glass object. So we can click on that and just go to our settings here. And here you see it has a relief. So remember, a bump is a relief, or relief is equal to bump. So I don't know if we turn this up, how much stronger that's really going to get. Let's take the opacity. There's a distortion, there's transparency. It's 100% transparent, so I can make it kind of opaque. The relief really isn't looking too much reliefy or too bumpy. But let's go ahead and make a new material. So I mentioned I would make a new material so we can see that from scratch. So I'm going to go to materials, I'm going to go to new, and I can start by making a new glass. And I can go to settings. Let's go back to materials, glass. Okay, so this is the glass material that's already on it. So let's dump this. Let's click on the little 3 dots and click on the garbage. Okay, so let's go back to materials, and let's go to materials, and let's find our glass materials. So there's so many of them. So many of them to choose from. You can have ones with a little bit of color in them, which are kind of cool. I really like these ones, these deco glasses. I think they're pretty cool. What else do we have? If we go to glass, we have glass panels, interior glass. So lots of glass to choose from. Let's see what else they got. They have milky glass, so if you're looking for a translucent glass, you can see that. And you can always just kind of click on these and then just go to settings and see what's being done there. Alright, so let's pick more of a clear glass. So I'm gonna go to this deco glass and get one that's kind of got a color to it and go to settings, and I'm going to make that color a little more desaturated, so a little less color, but still some color in there. It has the relief on there. I'm going to turn that relief up a little bit. Whoa, look at that. Not too much. A little too much, but you can see how you can make the glass look like it's a little bit wavy. It has a distortion too that I'm not seeing a whole lot, a little bit happening there, but let's make the relief a little bit smaller. Okay, and we're going to see this better when we get some reflections on it. So let's go ahead and, because we're looking, if we look at our little outline, we're getting close to the end. So we're looking at glass. I want to look at the reflection effect of glass. So let's turn everything on in Rhino. Let's save this file. Let's live sync it one more time. Make sure that's syncing all the way up. Alright, everything's come in. And we'll go back over to Rhino and turn off the live sync. Save this file. Alright, so I'm going to start to look at some of the effects. We looked at these at the end of the Lumion lighting material. We're going to look at them a little bit here. So let's go to photo and let's go to the second one here. Okay, so you see my metal. My metal looks a lot different, and we'll address that. It's a little bit too shiny at the moment, but it looks a lot different here than it did in the build mode. So we're getting a little bit nicer metal material here. Alright, so we're going to go to FX, and we're going to click on Effects, and we're going to click on Reflection. And it wants me to add planes. Right now the active planes are 0. So I'm going to click on Edit there. And it gives me a little warning on the left. Reflection planes will make your scenes heavier and can slow down Lumion significantly. We recommend using them minimally. Okay, we only have one large glass plane here, so I'm not too worried about it. So I'm going to click on the plus button, and I'm going to click on that plane. You'll see it gets highlighted in green. Okay, I'm going to click the check mark in the lower right. Okay, so now I'm starting to see reflections in the glass. I'm starting to see right above that metal perforated panel. I see the 3 lights reflecting. I see the soffit getting reflected back. Imagine if I went to another angle, I'd see this purple object. So I'm starting to see some reflective objects in the glass. So that's what this reflection is doing. So that's really cool. Alright. Let's go back. Alright, so there's more effects that we can put on this. And I looked at those in the Lumion lighting material, so you might want to go back and look at that. We looked at a whole bunch of them. But we're going to just get it from a stack. So a stack means from a default in Lumion. So I'm going to click on where it says Custom Style here. And I'm going to pick... So there's a bunch of them to pick from. I mentioned I could pick night, and that would make that self-illuminated object really bright up the scene. You see it's super bright there. So let's go ahead and click on that, and let's try our interior ray traced. Okay, and that comes with a clipping plane that we can disable. Okay, and the first thing that I want to change in this is where the sky is coming from. So it has a real skies. So I'm going to go ahead and click on real skies. And I'm going to change the real sky. I'm going to make it this one where the sun is a bit higher. I don't have that many to choose from. And I'm going to change its heading so that it's coming in through the space. So you can kind of see this and how this works. So this one's coming in on that back left wall there. Okay. I did a bunch of volume light settings in the previous video, and that looked really nice on here. So I'd like to add those back in. I'd like to get rid of the ray traced one. And it doesn't let me get rid of it. I think if I change this to custom, and then it's just kind of gone altogether. Alright, let's get in the FX for the volume light. Let's take a look at those once again. Oh, I can import those in. So I did export those. You can export and import things back in. So let's go ahead and import. So there is my load effects, and there's my load effects comes in. Alright, so those are all my effects. That's my effects list. And that image looks pretty good right there. I'd like to get rid of the ray trace, but it doesn't let me. Oh, there, it's gone now. Alright, so that's gone. Awesome. Alright, so now I just click on render photo, and I'm going to choose desktop, and that's going to take a few moments. Call this Lumion Materials. We didn't look at depth of field, so we can look at that before we end the video. Alright, so let's just go back over to Rhino, make sure we've covered everything. So exposure, depth of field, and render output. So those three things: exposure, depth of field, and render output. Alright, so Lumion's taking a second to update the latest rendering. There you see the volume light. That looks pretty nice there. The background's a little bit too saturated for me. Okay, so that's taking a few seconds there. Alright, it tells me when it's done. Okay, so let's look at exposure. It can be in many places, but one place it could be is under color correction. We have an exposure setting there. If I take that down, it darkens the scene. If I take it up, it brightens the scene. So we have an exposure there. So we can mess around with that under our color correction. Okay, depth of field. We don't have a depth of field in here, so I'm going to go to effects, and I'm going to go to camera, and I'm going to choose depth of field. Okay, so what I'll do to begin with is I'll just turn this all the way up until everything's really blurry, and then I'm going to find what it's focusing on. So the focus distance, if I move this slider here, this is the distance away from the camera. So right now it's focused on the brick wall on the far right, and I start to move back, and I can get the chair. I want to get the chair in there, and I'm going to do the sharp area size a little bit bigger. There it just sharpens the whole image up, but I'm going to make that so things in the back are a little bit blurry still, and I'm going to take the amount down. Okay, so a little bit of depth of field there, so it's focusing right on the chair and starting to blur the stuff back in the glass there. Alright, I think we've covered everything. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, leave me a like down below. Tell me why in the comments. My head's going to pop up in the top left. If you haven't subscribed, you can click on that to subscribe. In the upper right, I'll put a link to another Lumion video, and the lower right, another Lumion video. So 2 Lumion videos there for you to look at. Alright, have an awesome rest of your day, and I will see you on the next one.